I'm Tina Fordham. I'm a geopolitical strategist to investors and the C-suite, founder of Fordham Global Foresight, and today I'm going to tell you the top 3 themes that investors need to appreciate to understand geopolitical volatility for 2023. First of all, we need to be prepared to learn to do what I call firewalking. And what that means is learning to walk over hot coals without getting burned, because the reality is that we're not going to be able to avoid the geopolitical challenges that are coming our way against a backdrop of more complex economic growth, fiscal and monetary policy. We have to learn to go through them. So how do we learn to firewalk? I'm suggesting that we need to do what I call raising our PQ. You know about EQ. We need to raise our political quotient. So what do I mean by raising your PQ? Well, I highlighted some of the fundamentals of PQ for investors. Here are a couple of takeaways. First of all, the biggest mistake that investors tend to make is to extrapolate the present circumstances into the future indefinitely. That's also known as normality bias. In a time where there are so many moving pieces and so much volatility, that's obviously not a good thing to do. Another fundamental when it comes to PQ is avoiding dividing things into binary outcomes, binary scenarios. So there's a lot of talk at the moment in markets about whether globalization is dead. What I say is that hyper-globalization is dead, but that globalization continues, and by a lot of measures, US-China trade is in fact more robust than it's ever been. So what about this geopolitical volatility, where of course the big catalyst was the Russian invasion of Ukraine? That was not a black swan event, by the way. We had a whole build-up around it going back before 2008 and Russia's war in Georgia, the annexation of Crimea in 2014. But the event of Russia invading Ukraine, February 24th, 2022, has been a transformational event. How do we prepare for the aftermath and the fact that this conflict is not going to be resolved anytime soon? It suits Putin to have a war of attrition. That means we shouldn't be expecting a peace process or negotiations anytime soon. And it also puts pressure on Russia, the integrity of Russia as a state. But most of all, for global investors, what's important about the Western, the US, UK, European reaction to Russia is what it's meant to signal to Beijing. And that is raising the costs for any kind of intervention, territorial or otherwise. Expect, in other words, to see the continuation of tariffs, more sanctions, and probably more events like the balloons that were shot down over US airspace and caused an increase in tensions. We're looking at a pretty fraught geopolitical outlook, and the danger is that we over-normalize it. The third point I'm highlighting is that mercifully, we don't have a lot of systemically significant elections in 2023, but the economic landscape and policy landscape for 2023 is going to set the stage for a mega concentration of elections in 2024. Most people are already thinking a little bit about US elections, whether we'll see a return of Donald Trump. We're likely to have UK elections at the end of 2024, but also we have Mexico, India, South Africa. In other words, billions of people in systemically significant countries are going to go to the polls, and in part, the experience of cost of living crisis, inflation, rate hikes, etc., is going to influence those outcomes. So in a lot of ways, what happens in 2023 is important for what it's going to mean at the polls in 2024.